It's Vikings film review time. Michael Rand here with Andrew Krammer from the Star Tribune, fresh off your trip to Chicago. Andrew just got back into town a couple hours ago. You were witness to it all, 60 minutes and then some in Chicago. An overtime win, a wild game, and I don't quite know how to describe it other than the Vikings got a win. It almost felt like they won twice and lost once in that game.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It felt like more game than one. In a very Soldier Field game, just a very Chicago game, where just the weird things happened nonstop, and especially at the end, the special teams stuff. Caleb Williams running around, the officials playing such a big role in the game with what they called and what they didn't call at times. So I thought, the one tidbit from, I think it was Mike Pereira on the Fox broadcast, where he talks about how on that Addison 69-yard touchdown, they just can't review it because not every team on a coach's challenge, they can't review it because not every stadium has that camera angle. I mean, just incredible stuff all around.
All right. My hot takeaways first before we get to the film. Number one, as resilient as this team has been, and certainly they showed that in overtime by coming back to win, I wonder and I worry that if they would have lost that game, that would have been pretty demoralizing and could have started not a tumble out of the playoffs because they're pretty far up on everybody, but it would have started a pretty significant slide, I think, if they would have lost that game. So that would have been a hard one to come back from.
Yeah, that is hard to tell. I think we could have said a similar thing about, I mean, they beat the Jaguars, but that was one of their worst games of the year, and no one felt like that was a win. The resiliency you talk about, I think you posted this on social media, I think during the game too, about how, this will be the true test of their so-called resiliency in overtime. And they showed you. Sam Darnold goes 6 for 6, 90 yards. They overcome even just the micro, adversity of them overcoming the 2nd and 17 on that drive. The false start by Johnny Munt later in that drive. Just the little things they had to overcome. And that's Darnold, and that's kind of Darnold through his career. And that's this Vikings team, I think. And Kevin O'Connell, it's a credit to him and the locker room and the kind of makeup of guys they brought in. But as far as you saying that would have kind of sent them down, I think they've shown too much in the first 10 or 11 games. I wouldn't agree totally with that, because I think they've shown enough in the first 10 or 11 or so games to be like, this team's got some bounce back to them, even after a loss. They lose 2 games in 5 days. Talking to Harrison Phillips after the game, he brought that up and said, look, in those moments, like on Sunday against the Bears when it gets tough, we think back to obviously the tough moments we've already had and bounced back from, and losing 2 games in 5 days and then ripping off now 3 straight wins or 4 straight wins, since then. That's impressive. So if it would have been 3 and a tough loss at Chicago, this team still would have been, I think, who we thought they were, but they showed now even more so that, hey, they're pretty resilient.
I think that's fair. I think they definitely showed that. I just think if they would have lost this game and then, these last 6, 4 of them are at home, but this is a much tougher stretch of schedule than they've faced lately. I mean, if we go back to the, obviously the games against the Lions and the Rams were tough games, especially just the way the schedule broke. But, since then it's been Indy, Jacksonville, Tennessee, Chicago. Those are, 4 bad teams, even if the Bears probably are getting better now. I just think it would have been combine that with, the loss there, plus then you got to play the Cardinals, who again, they didn't play great this past week, but they're 6-5. Then you got to play the Falcons. Then you get the Bears again, but then you got Seattle, Green Bay, Detroit. Like, your schedule the next 6 is tough. So banking that win, I guess, was important. And I don't want to think about what might have happened if they would have lost that game.
Yeah, that is a good point about the upcoming schedule. Now this seems to be the meat of kind of where we're going to compare them to teams that are in that NFC playoff picture. This AFC South tour, not so much. The Bears, not so much, although they're showing some nice things. So yeah, you're right. I do think I see what you're saying as far as this upcoming schedule would have been tough to then be like, all right, now let's play our best against some of our best opponents.
Number 2, this isn't that hot, but just thinking about this, how much we got to worry about the offensive line again now, right? Because they got the reinforcement with Cam Robinson, but he goes down with the injury. I thought Quessenberry held up reasonably well in this game. They had answers, and Darnold, of course, held in the pocket. But if, again, like you said, if you're down to your 3rd string left tackle, or if you're having to move guys around, if they decide that's what they want to do, that is a fraught proposition that we should not overlook.
I agree with you there because, and I think that's been the case since they lost Christian Darrisaw. Even with Cam Robinson, he is a better pass blocker, a more consistent, reliable pass blocker, somebody who's not going to get. Questenberry can just get kind of thrown into the backfield, not have the power to anchor against some of these better edge rushers. Robinson has that. He's a physical monster, but he's often injured, as he was in Jacksonville. We're seeing that now with this foot injury he's plagued by, and he's also not a great run blocker. And we saw that again in his. He only played, I think, 9 or so snaps on Sunday, but he was very inconsistent when he got out of there. And then they did much of their production with David Questenberry in there for the rest of the game. So I think the guys that remain in the middle, the Garrett Bradburys, Blake Brandells, now Dalton Reisner, that's still not always getting the job done. Some of those 2-yard runs, 1-yard runs was Garrett Bradbury getting worked back like we've seen ad nauseum over the years. So I do think that is an issue, and it kind of stands out more when you don't have Josh Oliver and you don't have these additional pieces that they use to kind of make their blocking schemes work. Kevin O'Connell, credit to this coaching staff, whether it was him, Wes Phillips, the offensive coordinator, or Brian Angelico, the tight ends coach, they used Trent Sherfield as a tight end in this game. They brought him in and said, we're going to use him to chip edge rushers. He's actually going to block Montez Sweat on a 13-yard run by Aaron Jones. They brought him and used one of their bigger wide receivers as really a different role from what he's used to. And that's just good coaching. So they found ways around it. But when you face, as they did at times with the AFC South, some of these big defensive lines, and you're going to see again, Kenny Clark coming up here, you're going to see the Lions interior tandem that's really good. Those will continue to wreck you and be a problem. And it's going to test Sam Darnold's internal clock. It's going to make him have to be more perfect and more consistent and overcome some of his teammates, which is not what you want. You want for a journeyman quarterback who you're bringing along to kind of feel comfortable all the time. And some things are burning down around Sam Darnold, and credit to him for not withering yet.
Do you think they stay with Questenberry, or do you think now that they've kind of made the switch to Dalton Reisner that they would consider Brandell at tackle and Ingram back at guard? What's their best alignment?
Well, if Robinson's available, it's going to be him.
Of course, yes, of course. If he's healthy, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
If he's not, I do think they give Questenberry like a spot start. If this is not like a 4-week Robinson's got to go on IR, then we'll see kind of thing. If this is a week-to-week thing, I could absolutely see them going with Questenberry for a game or two. They've done that before. And they're really reticent to moving Blake Brandell, which they did discuss before trading for Cam Robinson. That was absolutely in consideration. But they're reticent to do that because of the amount of changes they've already made on the line. One good thing that helps them is Garrett Bradbury is one of the best communicators they've had there. He's somebody that does settle things down mentally. But physically, this line is just, you've got enough issues with them right now. So I think they're hesitant to do that. I wouldn't see that happening. I do think it would be Questenberry this next week against the Cardinals if they need that.
Final thing, Jefferson caught only 2 passes, would have had a longer third if not for the Brandon Powell penalty, but we saw finally them take advantage of all the attention paid to Jefferson. Addison goes for 162, Hawkinson goes over 100 yards. Like, you're seeing the full kind of scope of, hey, if you're going to double or even triple Justin Jefferson, other guys are going to be open. They made him pay, but I do think it's got to tip a little bit back the other way. Like, you can't have Justin Jefferson just catching 2 passes. So what I'm saying is they can't live exclusively like this. So what's the balance? How do they get everybody happy and fed when the offense is clicking?
Yeah, I do think there were missed opportunities for Justin in this game, but this was also a unique game where the Bears are already very good in coverage. Like, I think the Bears 4-7 record or whatever it is, this gets lost. Yeah. Matt Eberflus is a good coach. They do play good defense. And when you watch them in the secondary, the wide angles, you can see how sticky they are in coverage. You can see how disciplined they are. And you can see how a lot of the downfield shots were taken away. That 45-yarder to Jordan Addison to open, I think it was in the first half, from Darnold. It took such a perfect and timely read from Sam Darnold to hit that, because those 3 safeties, they're playing like 3 deep safeties. They're so in unison and conjunction that he had to throw it immediately when the middle guy turned his hips to the far sideline, knowing he wasn't turning toward Addison. He was turning toward Hawkinson, who was coming underneath. that's the kind of stuff where when you're not having coverage busts and guys aren't running wide open, it takes such perfect execution. And with Jefferson, it took even more perfect execution because they were even stickier on him. There was a play in the end zone, the opening goal to go sequence, where they just flat out tackled Justin Jefferson. They doubled him, clamped him up, and then just tackled him. There was no flag, no nothing. And Darnold did miss a wide open Addison underneath Jefferson. So they could have further taken advantage of the attention that Jefferson got. Instead, it was a check down to Munt that led into the Aaron Jones fumble at the 1 yard line. So they didn't get any points on that drive. But with Jefferson, he got so much attention. It was so physical, and he got 2 defensive pass interference calls that probably should have been more, including when you get tackled downfield. I think they played such a physical brand and a very good brand of coverage, and it seemed to be the Bears' kind of MO to go in there and be like, you know what, we're going to do the Legion of Boom thing where we're going to dare you to flag us every single play. We're going to bet that you don't. And these officials missed not just that, they missed a lot in this game. So there was a good gamble by the Bears that paid off. You're right. You do want to see more passes toward Jefferson, even in some more 50-50 opportunities for him. I do think, though, you've seen a pendulum swing the other way. When Darnold goes through the tough stretch he went through, where it was 5 or 6 turnovers in 2 games or something like that, you saw coaches talk about, hey, let's not have to always force it to Justin. O'Connell even brought up the big 69-yard catch and run by Addison. He said that was a same or similar play to what we ran against the Colts that Darnold forced into an interception to Jefferson. Instead, this time he waited for Addison to get open, and it really was such a tight window. Speaking of the Bears coverage,
it was,
such a great throw from Darnold. And O'Connell mentioned that too, of like one of the prettiest throws he's seen. So I think he navigated it well for this game. You don't throw for 330 yards, win a game in overtime without navigating it well. And then I didn't even talk about overtime. The Bears were all over Jefferson in overtime, which is why Hawkinson was so wide open over the middle on some of those big catches. So I think he navigated it well. I think when a defense is going to do this, there is that delicate balance. But when you're striking with these other guys so much, it's hard for me to be like, yeah, but he could have done better here or there, because it was still 330 yards against a really good pass defense, and 2 other guys went over 100 yards. I mean, that's if you're O'Connell and you're saying, look, Jefferson got 27 yards, but at least these other guys got all this stuff. You will take that. You'll take that every single day because it puts you in position to win. And this offense, not this defense, played winning football on Sunday.
I agree with that. And, it maybe gives defenses something else to think about too. It's like, okay, now they're making us pay for this. And you're right. I mean, when he was going through that tough stretch, I mean, wasn't Jefferson targeted on all 3 of his interceptions against the Jaguars? So, I mean, if you gotta be able to go other places. I'm just saying, like, in future games, you're probably not going to put up 30 points and 450 yards if Justin Jefferson is getting 27 of them. So keeping everybody happy was always, I think, going to be the challenge, because there's only so many footballs to go around. Aaron Jones goes over 100 yards. Addison gets 162. Speedy gets a touchdown. Hawkinson goes over 100s. Like, the only one who probably looks at his stat sheet and is like, that wasn't satisfactory was probably Jefferson, because you talked to him after the game, right? He's always going to be happy if they win, but he also wants his numbers.
Yeah, he was not happy. And I just looking at him, he wasn't happy. That's not something he told me. It's just based on my judgment. I was doing something on Addison and Hawkinson's big day, and obviously Jefferson was going to be a part of it, but he wasn't brought up to the media. So I just walked over and saw him sitting in his locker by himself, asked if he was talking this evening, and then we just got into it. And he was so sullen that my first question became, well, how are you feeling about how the game went for you? It doesn't seem like you're happy about it. And yeah, he admitted being frustrated. He said, I want to always make an impact on the game. I want to provide a spark for my team. But we got the win, and that's all that matters. So he said all the right things, but I didn't realize why he was so upset, because when you're watching the game live, you're watching so many different things. But when you are trying to zone in on Jefferson and you get the wide angled view, the Bears were just mauling him. So I'm sure he was just so frustrated about how he was getting covered. There were a couple opportunities where Darnold could have, he was open, like just some times where the Bears kind of let him go on the backside of a play, and Darnold didn't make it all the way back there to find him in the play and his progression. So there were some times he could have got the ball, but my guess is his frustration was largely just getting beaten up throughout the game and not having officials respect the fact that, hey, these guys are mauling me quite a bit. So yeah, he wasn't happy. I don't think it was his MO is not usually if I have a bad game and we win, I'm going to be mad. It's more so if he's just getting assaulted throughout parts of the game, he
Yep.
generally doesn't take well to that.